Welcome, everyone, to the deep dive. Today, we're cutting through all the noise of cosmic conflict to look at one of the most fraught, frantic, and I think politically charged episodes in galactic history. We have a really heavy stack of source material here, and it paints a picture of, high-stakes Time Lord politics that just spill out into the entire galaxy. And in the process, it drags a reluctant hero and an unwilling former Earthling right into the center of a massive multi-species war.
It's a profound study in unintended consequences. I mean, it really is. Some sources even call it chaos theory applied to space opera. And the sources, they lay out in meticulous detail how a simple, almost bureaucratic act of deposing a Time Lord president for being too aggressive.
You're ambitious, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Leads directly to an existential galactic conflict. And it forces a non-interventionist Time Lord, someone who, typically avoids even breathing too heavily on history, to become a full-blown military general, known only as the Supremo.
The Supremo. It's such a loaded title.
It is. So our mission today is to understand how these wildly disparate threads, the Warmongers, the exile, and this bizarre, frantic alliance all weave together. It's a tapestry of compromise and, really, of reluctant heroism.
Okay, so let's unpack this right from the beginning, because the setting here, it establishes the stakes immediately. Our cinematic opening takes us not just to Gallifrey, but to the heart of its power, the Panopticon.
Right, and this isn't a simple courtroom. You have to picture it. It's an architectural manifestation of Time Lord ego.
100%. It's this vast circular hall, so enormous that the dome ceiling, it generates its own localized atmospheric effects. The sources say clouds actually form up there.
Clouds. I mean, that image alone just sets the tone, doesn't it? It's immense, powerful, almost arrogantly eternal in its scale.
And the visual detail on the robes is so crucial for establishing the political hierarchy. These aren't just costumes. They represent the different chapters that define Gallifreyan thought.
It's not just a wardrobe choice, no. You've got the Predonians, who are, the most powerful and traditional chapter. They're dressed in these vibrant orange and scarlet robes.
Yeah.
And they typically advocate for strict isolationism.
The observe but don't interfere crowd.
Exactly. Then you have the Archalians, gleaming in various shades of green. They're often associated with administration and neutrality, the bureaucrats.
And finally, the Petatrix's chapter, dominating in heliotrope. They're usually the radicals, the scientific wing, and sometimes, well, the more expansionist wing.
Which is vital context. Yeah, it shows the internal dynamic, the different factions at play, even before the trial starts.
And the focal point is this great staircase leading down to the central dais. We're told the deposed president arrives, but not in triumph. He's escorted by chancellery guards. And they're acting more like jailers than a protection detail.
And the description of him is fascinating. He's slightly under medial height, has this high domed head, but possesses a natural charisma. It's so powerful, it makes him the focus of the entire hall, regardless of his status or, what color robes he's wearing.
He has that rare, effortless authority.
But that authority is about to be systematically stripped away by Vice President Saren. He's described as a tall, white-haired old man, and he delivers the verdict of the High Council. And it's a unanimous deposition.
Unanimous, that's the key word. The fact that it was unanimous, even involving the Patrexes, the more liberal scientific chapter, that just shows how far this Time Lord had truly overreached.
He must have terrified all of them across all party lines.
And the charge itself is massive. High treason. The council charges him not just with seeking war, but with seeking a policy of war and conquest that, and this is their belief, would bring devastation to the entire galaxy, and, critically, eventual ruin to the Time Lord race itself.
And that's the core philosophical clash right there, isn't it? Expansion and militant conquest versus the ancient Time Lord tradition of detached, passive observation.
The irony is just drenched in Time Lord hubris.
Oh, completely. He's found guilty of high treason, deserving of death, but then, in view of his past service, the sentence is commuted.
Not to imprisonment, though, which is what you'd expect.
No, not imprisonment, to permanent exile. They essentially choose to outsource the destruction he might cause rather than sully their hands with his blood or, deal with the inconvenience of housing him in some deep cell.
They just push the problem off Gallifrey.
And hope it resolves itself somewhere far, far away.
And his parting words are just pure fire, a masterpiece of contemptuous dismissal. He thrusts away Junior Cardinal Barusa, who's trying to be all solicitous, and just spits out his scorn. He calls his peers spineless fools.
He throws down the gauntlet. He claims he would have made their race masters of the cosmos, of the entire galaxy. But now they will inevitably degenerate into useless passive observers.
That last word, observers, just dripping with calculated scorn. It's his declaration of intent.
It is. He is Morbius, the Warmonger, and this deposition is merely a shift of venue for his ambition. He's not retiring. He's taking his mandate for conquest, and he's going to apply it to the universe away from all the bureaucratic constraints of the High Council.
And we get that immediate, almost poisonous glimpse into the internal power struggle even as the deposition ends. Saran, who is now the new president, he immediately pulls Barusa aside.
Right. And Saran recognizes the junior cardinal's vaulting ambition to replace him in the upcoming election. He even calls him an ambitious young swine in this moment of just cynical political frankness.
It's brilliant political theater. They understand each other perfectly. They're focused entirely on maintaining internal political control while at the same time pushing this massive galactic threat out onto the galactic stage.
It highlights the central moral failure of Gallifrey, really. They are so caught up in their internal jockeying for position, worried about who gets the sash and the rod, that they fail to neutralize a genuine cosmic threat. They choose instead to politely exile him and then just manage the political fallout amongst themselves.
Which brings us directly to you, the listener, and your mission today. We are tracing how that deposed Time Lord, Morbius, sets about conquering the galaxy, and how the frantic, unlikely alliance that forms to stop him forces another Time Lord, the Doctor, into the role of the Supremo, into the role of a military commander with all the moral baggage that entails. The narrative takes such a jarring turn now. We jump immediately from the sterile, high-tech political drama of Gallifrey to the steamy, low-tech, and brutal reality of a conquered world. Sylvana. This is where we meet Peri, Perpigillium Brown, the human traveler who accidentally becomes the heart of the Resistance.
And Sylvana is described so vividly in the sources. It's incredibly fertile, with this lush vegetation and a climate that ranges from temperate to tropical. It's perfect.
A paradise, basically.
It should be. But the new masters of the planet have a singular purpose for all its productivity: factory farming. It's being systematically exploited, turned into a massive food production zone to feed the ever-expanding armies of the invaders.
That detail really emphasizes the cold, logistical nature of Morbius's campaign, doesn't it? It's about resources and logistics, not glory or some high-minded ideology.
Exactly. And Peri, she isn't some trained commando or freedom fighter. The sources are very clear on this. She's an innocent bystander, a traveler from old Earth who arrived by accident and just got stuck when the battle fleet landed.
She didn't seek out the conflict.
The conflict found her. But what radicalizes her, it's the sheer inexcusable injustice and cruelty of the occupying troops. The sources specifically mention regrettable excesses. Friends beaten, one raped. That moral outrage is the fuel for her transformation from a passive tourist into an active guerrilla leader.
So she transitions from observer to leader because of moral necessity.
Yes, and the sources detail a highly precise ambush they've designed. They're going to hit a heavily armored, all-terrain supply hover train near the enemy base.
And the precision needed from this, this ragged guerrilla band is really impressive. They had to disable both the front and rear cabins at the same time.
Simultaneously, yeah. Because these massive hover trains, they're engineered with powerful engines at both ends to traverse the difficult terrain. If you only disable one end, the other could still push the train clear of the ambush zone.
And we get this crucial, really revealing insight into Peri's character right in the middle of the ambush. They've detonated the mines, the hover train is convulsing and partially derailed. A young, terrified guard manages to sprint along the path toward the base, alarm systems glaring. And Peri has him dead in her sights, aiming the laser rifle right between his shoulder blades.
This is her ethical crucible, that moment. A momentary touch on the firing stud, and the guard is dead, the risk is neutralized. But Peri hesitates. There's this flicker of humanity that just overrides the military necessity.
She fires wide, she lets him escape.
And it's a profound moral failure in the eyes of her ferocious second-in-command, Kieran, a man who had seen his wife and children massacred by the invaders. Kieran has no more moral bandwidth for mercy.
He immediately reproaches her, and Peri's defense is utilitarian. She says he was just a kid, and by the time he raises the full alarm, they'll be gone.
But Kieran's reaction, he'd be long gone if it was up to me. It just shows the brutal realities of guerrilla warfare contrasted against Peri's lingering ethics. The tension between necessary ruthlessness and core humanity is drawn so beautifully here.
And tragically, that split-second hesitation, that very human delay, is precisely what allows Commandant Nadir of the Fredonian Occupation Force to catch them.
This is where Nadir reveals himself to be a truly masterful tactician, not just some brute in a uniform.
He outthinks them because he did his homework. He studied their records and their methods. He recognized that Peri specializes in the unexpected.
So what did he do? He leaked news of the supply train as bait. He correctly deduced that the unexpected attack wouldn't happen deep in the jungle where guards were already alert, but close to the base, where they would assume the enemy was complacent.
That's textbook tactical genius, using your enemy's own predictability against them.
But the most nuanced part of Nadir's strategy is why the supply hover train wasn't empty, even though it was bait. An empty train, he reasoned, would signal a trap. The highly intelligent guerrillas would alter their escape plan or avoid the attack entirely.
So he risked precious supplies for the thoroughness of the ambush. He made the trap look like a genuine target.
Exactly, confirming Peri's initial deduction that there has to be bait in a trap.
So when Peri, Kieran, and Gina are captured, Nadir grants Peri this fascinating level of military courtesy. He acknowledges her achievement in tying down considerable troops for a long time. He calls her a worthy opponent.
He even asks about her history, finding it genuinely bizarre that an innocent visitor from old Earth got involved in what should have been an internal galactic skirmish.
And Peri's explanation is so simple but so powerful. She hated the way the troops were treating people after the occupation.
And Nadir just dismisses the atrocities as mere regrettable excesses in the first stages of an invasion. It shows this vast, cold disconnect between the operational commander, who sees logistics and victory, and the real human cost of the occupation.
Their sentence is brutal, but it's delivered with this cold formality. Execution by firing squad at dawn tomorrow. Keeping up the old military traditions, as he says.
But Peri, even condemned, refuses to yield. As she's led away past Lieutenant Hakan, she fakes dizziness, clutches his lapels, and delivers a crippling knee strike.
This is more than just an act of defiance, isn't it? It feels calculated.
It is. It's a calculated challenge. She ensures that Hakan, who was meant to command the firing squad, would have a personal reason to hate her. It was a sign she was still fighting, still struggling. Nadir, who saw the blow, wisely warned Hakan not to underestimate her. A warning Hakan is far too arrogant to heed.
So the miracle Peri hoped for arrives. And it's dramatic. It's a massive, overwhelming attack. Retro rockets and laser cannon causing the base walls to vibrate violently. This is the unexpected escape.
And Hakan, of course, panics. Panicked by the noise and confusion, he attempts to carry out an early, unsanctioned execution. It confirms Peri's earlier accusation that he was giving an unlawful command.
She's so quick-witted in this moment. She's arguing jurisprudence with the guards, even as she and Kieran are subduing Hakan and his men. But the real world-warping surprise comes shortly after. Peri returns to the Commandant's office just in time to witness the formal surrender of Nadir to the invading Alliance forces.
And the officers accepting the surrender. I mean, it's the strangest possible pairing. It's a visual representation of galactic warfare just completely flipped on its head. You have a short, squat, round-faced Sontaran that's Battle Major Streg.
And a tall, elegant, green-skinned Dratonian High Commander Errol.
And they are guarded by massive Ogron sentries.
The sources really emphasize the utter shock of this visual. A Draconian and a Sontaran in the same army, guarded by Ogrons.
These are species that are often historic enemies. They're locked in centuries of rivalry and mutual hatred. This bizarre composition is the first true, undeniable sign that Morbius's power, or the force arrayed against him, is warping galactic norms.
It suggests a threat so great it compels ancient enemies to fight side by side.
And the terms of surrender are generous. They grant parole if the Fredonian government withdraws from the conflict, which suggests a political objective beyond simple military conquest. They need to drain Morbius's support base.
But the Sontaran, Streg, he quickly reveals their true and highly specific purpose. He confirms Peri's VIP status in the strangest possible way. They're not here just for the base. They're tracing a missing human guerrilla leader, often shortened to Peri, under the direct orders of the Supremo.
And Streg warns Nadir. He says if they harmed her, it will go hard with you. The Supremo wants this person found and is not to be lightly disobeyed.
Nadir, stunned, claims ignorance of any Perpigillium Brown. But when Strag mentions the shortened name Peri, Nadir swings around, confirming her identity just as Peri dramatically pushes open the door to the office.
It's so theatrical. She steps into the room and confirms it. I am Peri, the one your Supremo apparently wants found.
Battle Major Streg, the Sontaran, he initially refuses to believe it. He's citing physical differences from their military files. This specimen is a human female. The hair is finer, the thorax of a different construction.
It's such a Suntaran thing to say. But Errol, the Draconian,
Mhm.
with that inherent Draconian elegance, intervenes. He points out that human customs and names are mystifying, and female leaders, while impossible on Suntara or Draconia, are apparently not impossible for humans.
So High Commander Errol then escorts Peri to the Alliance flagship. She describes it as a towering castle of steel bristling with weaponry, and she's treated as Lady Peri.
It reflects the great concern and respect the Supremo has for her. She drifts into sleep, and she's imagining the Supremo as a military giant, a square-jawed Superman of galactic strategy.
But when she wakes up and is finally ushered into the dressing room behind the conference chamber, she sees him. He's a lean, medium-sized figure in a simple but ornate black uniform. And he speaks in this quiet, calm voice that just crackles with authority, addressing an incredibly diverse audience of every sentient species in the galaxy.
He's using a classic stick-and-carrot approach.
Yeah.
He's abusing them initially for their tactical failings, then offering sincere congratulations for their overall heroism, and earns him a roar of Supremo, Supremo, that literally shakes the hall.
He strode in, ripping open the high collar of his jacket as he spoke, and when Peri stares in utter fascination, recognizing the familiar yet different face.
It's the massive reveal.
"Hello, Doctor," she says, and he replies, "Hello, Peri. Nice to see you again."
The famous non-interventionist Time Lord, exiled and disguised, is now the feared military commander known as the Supremo, which raises the deepest question of all. How on earth did he get here?
So, if Peri is now standing face-to-face with the Supremo, commanding this multi-species alliance in the middle of a massive war, how did the Doctor, the reluctant Time Lord, end up here? We need to step back in subjective time and understand the traumatic event that brought him to the neutral ground of Karn in the first place. This all precedes the military campaign.
Exactly. The sources detail an earlier trip where the Doctor arrived at the hospice on Karn, and he was carrying Peri, who was gravely wounded. Her arm was almost completely severed, and she had been attacked by this oversized, prehistoric, bird-like creature. The creature's saliva was likely toxic. It was an absolute life-or-death medical emergency.
And the hospice itself is such a fascinating paradox. It really reflects the moral confusion of the galaxy. It's a former warlord's castle, but it's been transformed into a semi-military medical establishment.
It functions as this desperately needed oasis of neutral ground in a warring galaxy, offering high-tech medical care. But it's funded by private patients and client planets who need their wounded troops patched up and sent back out to fight again.
So it profits from war while simultaneously healing its victims.
A very grim business model. And Karn is also the home of the legendary Sisterhood of the Flame, seers, prophetesses, some say witches, and they possess the vital key to immortality, the elixir of life, which can freeze the age of its consumers.
Right, so Reverend Mother Marin is eternally old, yet powerful, while Ohika is eternally young and beautiful.
Yes, and the hospice, though it's secular and scientific, benefits directly from the Sisterhood's elixir. It provides miraculous cures. It creates this very uncomfortable accommodation between high science and deep mysticism.
Upon arrival, the Doctor, using the rather clumsy alias John Smith,
Never his strong suit.
is immediately detained by Commander Hawken, the head of security. Hawken is physically imposing, described as a well-tailored gorilla, but he's educated. He really resents having to use crude methods like detention.
And his main dilemma is the Doctor's arrival itself. He bypassed Karn's highly sophisticated sensor grid and security systems with his unfathomable piece of equipment.
The TARDIS, the blue box.
Of course. So Hawken is suspicious, but the Doctor manages to secure aid only through the intervention of Reverend Mother Marin. She recognizes his importance, partly because he spoke the words of power upon arrival, a clear sign he's a Time Lord, and partly because, well, she's a prophetess.
So Marin forces the head of the facility, Surgeon General Solon, to treat Peri immediately. She overrides the outraged staff who initially dismissed them as stray vagrants.
And Solon, the greatest surgeon in the galaxy, despite his massive conceit, he agrees to operate. Meanwhile, Hawken, still wary of the Doctor's unknown power and swayed by Marin's belief that Smith is an important omen, offers a deal instead of immediate torture or detention.
Right, he admits he's going to trust the Doctor. He even notes Riley that trusting strangers is precisely what gets security heads killed.
So the Doctor gives his parole. He promises not to escape or act against the hospice's interests in exchange for staying until Peri is recovered. And this immediately puts the Doctor on a tight leash, which prevents him from immediately reporting Solon's dark activities later. It sets up the ultimate conflict.
Speaking of dark activities, despite Solon successfully reattaching Peri's arm, an incredible feat of surgery, he gives her only a 65% chance of recovery due to potential toxicity.
And Peri, with her insatiable curiosity, soon stumbles upon Solon's horrifying secret when she ventures into the restricted wing.
This is where the narrative takes a truly gruesome scientific horror turn.
It does. Peri discovers Project Z, the deliberate creation, or rather recreation, of life. Solon is grafting non-compatible interspecies parts, like a reptilian hand onto a human body, or different animal parts onto humanoid forms, and animating these grotesque, shambling creations using complex electrical and chemical processes.
She experiences this firsthand, doesn't she? She breaks into the hidden lab and finds this ghastly, scarred, and mismatched creature on a slab. When she screams and runs, the creature's massive reptilian hand detaches and clamps onto her wrist.
A traumatic moment that confirms Solon's terrifying ambition. He truly believes a successful Project Z will make him master of the galaxy with an invincible army, unkillable because they're already dead. An army that can't feel pain or fear.
He's a scientific madman, but he's also a highly practical manipulator. Peri's sudden, dramatic relapse, picking up a severe infection that triggers tissue rejection, that's not an accident.
Not at all. It's a deliberate scam. The sources confirm Solon deliberately poisoned Peri via an injection from his assistant Drago to create a medical emergency that only he could solve.
He then uses Peri's failing health to force the Doctor's hand. He claims only a fresh supply of the elixir of life will save her.
And this is critical. The Sisterhood had previously denied Solon access because they knew he was misusing it on dead bodies for Project Z, violating its sacred purpose.
So the Doctor, frantic to save Peri, knowing his hands are tied by his parole and the urgency of the situation, makes the dangerous trek to the Temple of the Flame.
And Marin, recognizing the manipulation but also acknowledging the urgency of saving an innocent life, gives the Doctor the elixir. This trip forces the Doctor to acknowledge the paradoxes of time travel, as he had met Marin before, but she was meeting him for the first time in her timeline.
A classic temporal loop.
Right. So he returns, gives the elixir to Solon, and Peri is saved. But the Doctor, ever observant, soon realizes he was brilliantly tricked.
How so?
Solon had switched an empty file for the real one. He gave Peri an antidote he already possessed, while keeping the fresh, powerful elixir for his Project Z experiments. He used the Doctor to restock his inventory.
The Doctor's reaction to this betrayal is measured but furious. But what happens next? This is the key moral failure that sets the war in motion.
It is. He refuses to report Solon, despite the attempted murder and the zombie factory right next door. And this is where he invokes the high-minded Time Lord non-intervention principle. He argues that interfering further could distort the entire time stream, especially involving a Time Lord's actions.
He tries to rationalize his decision. He claims that Solon's Project Z won't work anyway. He calls it idiotic and says that ruling the galaxy with a decomposing army is impossible.
But the sources highlight this as a profoundly cynical or perhaps cowardly move. He convinces himself and desperately tries to convince Peri that they must stick to their principles of non-interference, even when a demonstrable monster is right next door.
He packs up, insisting they must leave as soon as possible, leaving Solon to work out his own destiny. And it is this refusal to act that directly enables Morbius's arrival.
Precisely. Had the Doctor reported Solon to Hawken or Marin, Solon would have been neutralized, and Morbius would have lost his crucial partner in crime and the key currency, the elixir of life, necessary for his conquest plans. The Doctor's high principles inadvertently open the door for the Warmonger.
The sources now shift us to the primary political action, showing how that open door was used. A peace conference is called At Karn, hosted by Governor Lord Delmar, involving a collection of small, low-tech frontier planets, Fangoria, Romark, Darkeen, Martak.
And their goal is entirely defensive. They want to form an alliance to avoid being gobbled up by larger, ruthless empires.
Which creates the perfect, unassuming platform for Morbius to launch his true campaign. The supposed leader of this defensive coalition is a General Rambusi.
Right. He arrives exuding this enormous, captivating charisma. He delivers a powerful, effective political speech about renouncing personal power for service to the smaller worlds. He claims he retired to Darkeen as a melon farmer, but the chaos of the galaxy forced him back into public life to organize genuine peace.
It sounds incredibly noble. But the Doctor and Hawken both immediately suspect the charisma hides a massive ego and tremendous vanity. And the arrangement seems odd. The sources call them a pretty scruffy collection of planets, run mostly by pirates, bandits, and warlords.
These are not your typical peacemaking types. They're desperate, fearful entities looking for a strong protector, and that's the General's great gift, binding useful, self-interested devotees to his cause.
And the revelation comes swiftly at the reception. Peri, seeing the General up close, recognizes him instinctively from the ancient Gallifreyan records she saw.
And the Doctor, whose mind is always working on language patterns and codes, he realizes the simple anagram, Rumbusi, equal Morbius.
But hold on a second. If Morbius is supposed to be this brilliant, terrifying warmonger, why is his codename Rumbusi? I mean, an obvious anagram. Isn't that just lazy planning for a cosmic threat?
That's an excellent question, and the source material suggests it was a profound act of ego, not laziness. He wanted the Doctor, or any Time Lord observing, to solve it.
Wow.
It's Morbius demonstrating his utter contempt for the peers who exiled him. It's the equivalent of sending a postcard to Gallifrey saying, "I'm here, I'm powerful, and you can't stop me." He wanted his genius recognized, even in disguise.
So the Doctor now understands Morbius's full motivation and grand plan, which is confirmed when Morbius meets secretly with Solon.
Exactly. Morbius reveals he is using this small alliance of scruffy planets as a base to launch a campaign to conquer others. And he's promising his key followers, and Solon, who dreams of his invincible zombie army, the elixir of life, immortality, a guaranteed bribe for loyalty.
This is the critical convergence point, and it was facilitated by the Doctor's earlier non-intervention.
It is. Solon's obsession with the elixir and the creation of life perfectly feeds Morbius's vanity and his ambition for conquest. The elixir becomes the ultimate currency of loyalty, securing fanatic adherence faster than any political platform or ideology could. Morbius confirms he will continue with his project because, as he says, there are always more galaxies to conquer.
The danger is now existential and undeniable. The Doctor, feeling responsible for unleashing this monster and needing to protect Karn, is compelled to return to Gallifrey. He does so disguised, cropped hair, darkened skin from some designer drug of Hawkins, and ornate Karn ambassador clothes to give him a plausible identity to bypass security.
He arrives back at the Panopticon, only to face classic Time Lord bureaucratic stalling. Saran and Barusa, they initially refuse to believe him or act. They argue that Morbius is merely a political exile, and thus not their problem. They claim he has forfeited his claim to Time Lord interest.
And Barusa, ever the pedantic politician, even questions the anagram evidence. He insists it could merely be coincidence.
It's a perfect example of Time Lords searching desperately for an excuse to do absolutely nothing.
The Doctor loses his cool. He argues furiously that they have turned Morbius loose to wreck the galaxy, and that their policy of non-intervention is nothing more than moral cowardice.
He forces them to look at the undeniable truth through matrix projections, these complex temporal simulations, which reveal Morbius's future strategy of total domination.
And it's only when they run the projections that they understand the true existential scale of the danger. The masters of observation realize they can't afford to ignore this.
However, they still refuse to dirty their own hands or risk their own fleet.
No, instead, they resort to the only compromise they can stomach. They appoint the Doctor now as the Supremo, as their roving ambassador, and they instruct him to build a grand alliance against Morbius.
This is the moment the Doctor reluctantly trades his identity as the non-interventionist exile for that of a full-fledged and authorized military commander.
This is also where the Time Lords reveal their morally bankrupt methods, isn't it? They fund the Doctor's mission using the Time Lord Agency's secret funds.
Essentially a black budget for black ops. It confirms they are actively engaging in history, just secretly, and the Doctor's first task is to secure the aid of the most powerful and often warring species, the Draconians and the Centarans.
So how does he manage this massive feat of diplomacy and manipulation?
By framing Morbius. He uses those secret funds to engineer border incidents. He allows Draconian ship to be destroyed and Centauran transport to go missing, then plants evidence that blames Morbius.
So he provokes their two most formidable rivals into joining his cause under the banner of revenge. He's effectively outsourcing the recruitment of his army.
The Grand Alliance assembles on the rocky desert planet Eridus. Morbius's forces are predominantly low-quality mercenaries and the scum of the galaxy. This means the Doctor's force, though highly diverse, must be vastly superior in quality and moral cohesion to compensate for the difference in numbers.
And the recruiting process is just incredibly bizarre. It really highlights the Supremo's pragmatic military genius. When a shabby group of massive Ogrons, led by Vogar, arrives, these low-tech barbarians, considered useful only as Muscle Errol and Streg, protest against including such unreliable troops.
But the Doctor, the Supremo now, he makes a decisive move that secures a crucial tactical advantage. He appoints the Ogrons as his personal bodyguard and places them in a place of honor near his command post.
And this simple act leverages the Ogrons' most powerful trait, their primitive, absolute loyalty to a single leader.
Instantly solving the thorny problem of who guards the commander of this incredibly disparate, internally squabbling force, Vogar promises, "We serve you to the death."
This move really demonstrates the Supremo's transition from academic observer to pragmatic commander. He's willing to use technology, propaganda, and sheer brute loyalty for a greater strategic good.
And more powerful allies soon arrive, drawn by the undeniable threat of Morbius or perhaps the promise of rich targets and revenge. The Cybermen arrive with 12 battlecruisers strong, alongside ice warriors and other militant human and humanoid species. The Supremo now commands a massive, albeit internally tense, army.
And then the Supremo unveils his master strategy, showing that he hasn't just become a soldier, but a brilliant, unconventional strategist. He avoids a direct assault on Morbius's main base. Instead, the plan is to attack Fangoria.
Morbius's very first conquest, which is obscure and strategically insignificant in terms of military value.
So why there?
The strategy is brilliantly simple and devastatingly effective. They will follow Morbius's footsteps, but they will liberate planets, Fangoria, Romark, Darkeen, Martak, faster than Morbius can conquer them and establish stable garrisons.
So he's exploiting the fact that Morbius's forces are stretched thin by occupation. He's draining his resources and recruitment pool while simultaneously building moral momentum for the Alliance.
And building a vast volunteer reserve force for themselves.
And the strategy proves immediately successful on Fangoria. The liberation is fast and decisive. They appoint the local official, Makir, whose family was previously held hostage by Morbius's forces, as the new president.
And the sources emphasize the emotional resonance of this liberation for the Alliance troops. It gives them a cause to fight for beyond revenge or simple soldiering. They are fighting for freedom. It creates a snowball effect, transforming the Supreme's mercenary army into a genuine liberation force, thereby securing the quality advantage they needed against Morbius's sheer numbers.
So with the Alliance gaining momentum and liberating 4 key planets, Morbius realizes the Supremo strategy is working. He has to stop the liberation train immediately.
In a show of pure strategic ruthlessness, he abandons his remaining occupied planets and consolidates his entire army into a massive force to attack Karn. His goals are clear: revenge on the Doctor and the seizure of the Elixir of Life, the ultimate prize.
This confirms his core motivation: ego and immortality. He recognizes that holding on to the scattered planets will cost him the war, so he gives them up for the sake of ultimate victory at Karn, sacrificing his immediate smaller empire to destroy the Supremo and gain the Elixir.
The space battle that follows is epic. Morbius's fleet arrives, immediately bombarding the castle on Karn, reducing the former warlord's fortress to rubble. And the Supremo, aboard his flagship, performs a calculated, near-suicidal maneuver, a double hyperjump.
This isn't just a fast jump. The navigator, Taro, a Denali, is terrified. He confirms the jump shouldn't have been possible because a single hyperjump is already risky.
A double hyperjump risks massive temporal feedback. It could tear the fabric of space-time and destroy the ship. But the Supremo used his unique Time Lord connection to the TARDIS systems, applying that temporal knowledge to conventional spacecraft to calculate the impossible risk. It's a true measure of his desperation to save the people on Karn.
And that terrifying maneuver works. It allows the Alliance fleet to materialize immediately above the castle, surprising Morbius's fleet and dealing them a savage blow.
The element of shock forces Morbius's fleet to retreat briefly, to regroup, buying the precious time needed to take the fight to the ground, where the Alliance forces are still badly outnumbered.
The ground war is desperate. The Alliance troops, led by Errol, Streg, Ice Lord Azanir, and Ryan's hunters, they form a tight perimeter around the castle. They fight heroically, but Morbius's numbers are just inexorably driving them back, tightening the circle around the stronghold.
But then the Mystic Allies step in. They transform the battlefield from a military zone into a psychological one. Reverend Mother Marin leads the Sisterhood in aid of the defense, and they use their psychic powers, specifically the terrifying chant of death.
So they don't need blasters. They use their powers to cause mass confusion, panic, and death among the mercenaries.
The sources detail specific examples of this devastating psychic warfare. They strike a battalion commander blind at a crucial moment. Or they cause section leaders to turn on their own men in panicked confusion. This supernatural element profoundly unnerves Morbius's scum-of-the-galaxy army.
I mean, it's hard enough fighting Sontarans and Cybermen, but fighting invisible magic is too much for hired guns.
The tide is turning psychologically, but numerically, the Alliance is still on the verge of being overwhelmed.
Which sets the stage for the dramatic, emotional, and decisive final surprise reinforcements. Just as the mercenaries believe victory is theirs, and Morbius is descending in triumph, a new wave of assault ships appears. Ships Morbius had just seen leaving his former possessions.
Except they aren't Morbius's reinforcements. They are volunteer forces, led by President Makir of Fangoria, along with Fredonian troops, farmers, and market traders from all the newly liberated planets.
And their weaponry is utterly varied, even antiquated. The sources mention scythes and pikes mixed in among laser rifles and scavenged energy weapons.
This is the moment of pure emotional triumph, the victory of freedom over tyranny. These volunteers hit the mercenaries from behind, causing utter panic and leading to a complete rout.
Morbius's remaining battle cruisers, seeing their master's defeat, just vanish from the skies. The Doctor has won the ground battle, and the victorious Alliance shouts, "Supremo! Supremo! Supremo!"
Morbius himself is captured. He was stunned by a psychic blast from Marin after the Doctor knocked her aiming hand slightly aside to prevent a lethal shot. He survives the battle, but not for long, or so the Time Lords intend.
Barusa and Ratisbon arrive almost instantly. They set up a swift, utterly rigged Time Lord trial in the ruined Great Hall. They intend to execute Morbius quickly to end the crisis and avoid further scandal that could reflect poorly on Gallifrey.
And the Doctor, having observed this process, notes cynically that Time Lord trials don't decide anything. They just confirm a decision already taken.
But the sources reveal the incredible Solon twist that plays out during and immediately after the trial.
Yes. Solon, desperate to fulfill his promise to Morbius and seize control of his genius, attempts to exhume corpses to finish his experiments in the private wings. His ultimate goal is to graft Morbius's genius brain onto a new, massive zombie body, the result of Project Z, to achieve immortality for his leader and himself.
This is the Doctor's moment of profound, cynical, and reluctant manipulation. He finds Solon in a frenzy, arguing with Grimoire, Morbius's black-cloaked vampire lieutenant, who is trying to rescue Morbius from Time Lord custody.
And Solon, panicked, uses a whirring metallic device to decapitate Grimoire, who was the vampire that had been draining patrols and providing fresh materials for Solon's work.
So the Doctor, knowing he cannot allow Morbius to be truly executed by the Time Lords, a final act of violence he cannot sanction, or allow Solon to proceed openly, manipulates the situation.
He takes Solon's new creation, the massive intended body for Morbius's brain, and pretends to execute Morbius himself. He claims to have given him a lethal injection out of vengeance for Peri.
This necessary lie allows two critical things to happen. Solon escapes with Morbius's brain, thinking he can still achieve Project Z immortality for his master in secret. And the Time Lords believe Morbius is dead, solving their political problem without having to fully co-opt the Doctor in the final act of violence.
And Hawken, the head of security, is left to tidy away the headless vampire body, a final piece of gruesome house cleaning. The Doctor has averted a sanctioned execution, but perpetuated a horrific science experiment.
The cost of victory is high, even in this manipulated outcome. Battle Major Streg, the Sontaran, dies, and he's proud to have a glorious death in battle. He tells the Doctor he gave him the greatest gift any Sontaran can have.
And Taro, the Denali navigator, who secretly smuggled himself off the flagship to fight for the Supremo despite the massive dangers, is also killed. The alliance was won with blood and dedication.
The sources show the immediate political aftermath, and it really confirms the Time Lords' true colors. They are masters of co-option. President Saran immediately offers the Doctor powerful positions, leading an intergalactic peacekeeping force, leveraging his new title.
And Barusa, recognizing his electoral value, wants him as his campaign manager in the upcoming election. Ratisbon even suggests staging a military coup on Gallifrey, leveraging his victory prestige and army control.
But the Doctor, he's just sick of the relentless cycles of conflict and the moral compromises he was forced to make. The framing of Morbius, the use of the Ogrons, the deliberate deception regarding the execution.
He refuses all political roles. He states clearly he is sick of war and battles and military glory. He and Peri retrieve the TARDIS from the dusty storeroom where Hawken had kept it, and they just depart.
He returns to his nonconformist Time Lord identity, though Peri notices he's fundamentally changed by the experience of command. The final scene shows the two of them back in the TARDIS study. And Peri, sensing the deeper complexities now, asks about the true story of his first visit to Karn, setting the stage for more complex revelations about his personal timeline, demonstrating that even a massive galactic war doesn't necessarily solve all temporal paradoxes.
No, it often just creates new ones.
So what does this all mean when we put the sources down and look at the big picture? This deep dive really revealed how easily galactic conflict relies on three core elements that should never mix: charisma, high-stakes, ethically compromised science, and morally cynical political backing.
Absolutely. Morbius's terrifying rise was entirely dependent on his overwhelming charisma and the guaranteed promise of immortality, the elixir of life. A scientific miracle he stole from the Sisterhood, facilitated by the obsession and technical skill of Surgeon General Solon. The war was never truly about territory. It was about bribery and ego, using the elixir as the ultimate currency of loyalty.
And we saw the incredible moral conflict forced upon the Time Lords. They prefer passive observation, but their initial refusal to deal decisively with Morbius, the exile forced another Time Lord, the Doctor, to reluctantly become the Supremo, to become a military commander to fight him.
They successfully outsourced their dirty work, but only by coercing one of their own nonconformists into an identity he disguised.
And when the Doctor succeeded, the Time Lords immediately tried to co-opt the victory and the victor. Saran, Barusa, and Ratisbon all tried to pull the Doctor back into the Gallifreyan political machine. It proved that their true priority was never galactic peace, but securing power for themselves and their chapter. The victory was just a political asset to be leveraged.
And the Doctor rejected it all. He chose instead to go back to being a wanderer.
But here's the most provocative final thought from this whole mess: the ultimate result of the Supremo's moral compromises. Despite the Doctor's insistence that he would not interfere in Solon's life, the reason he left Solon alive in the first place, he inadvertently set up a future where Solon would eventually use Morbius's genius brain in a monstrous scientific experiment.
The very act of preventing Morbius's execution by the Time Lords, driven by the desire to uphold the principle of not killing and to maintain his cover, ensured the cycle of horror continued. The Doctor avoided immediate tyranny and immediate violence, but by giving Solon the means to escape with Morbius's brain, he facilitated a future tragedy.
So did the Doctor truly prevent a disaster, or did he merely shift the time and location of a new one?
The line between preventing disaster and merely shifting the time and location of a tragedy is impossibly thin. And for a Time Lord, interference is almost always inevitable, even when you try desperately to avoid it.